A very warm welcome to all of you viewing this interview. Our guest this evening is none other than JS Amoghavarsha, well known wildlife photographer and filmmaker. Allow me to give a small introduction. He has been working for BBC and National Geographic, two of the very biggest names in wildlife documentary productions. He has contributed to a Microsoft project uh, which developed cutting edge digital narratives on uh, the historic city of Hampi. He also works with various NGOs and forest departments. Very significantly, Amoghavarsha contributed to Science Express Biodiversity Special, an initiative by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, which toured India for over a year and was seen by more than 2.5 million people. Speaking of achievements and feathers in Amoghavarsha's cap, his video on climate change was showcased in the 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi and French President Francois Hollande in the presence of several world leaders. This year, too, in 2020, he was a part of a panel discussion at the UN Environment Programme along with Ricky Cage, where his film Wild Karnataka, narrated by the legendary Sir David Attenborough, was screened on World Wildlife Day. Well, he also conducts photography workshops and he leads expeditions. But Amogh, that's what we call him. Amogh is what we call him, a shortened version of his name. Amogh's journey began as a photographer and moves towards filmmaking. Today, he is equally passionate about both forms, as documentary and as an art. His work has been extensively exhibited and published. We are here with Amoghavarsha to find out about his success secrets and also to gain some insights about the gear that he uses and his process. Welcome, Amoghavarsha, to our interview session.
Thank you, Madhavan. It's a pleasure to be here because for all of us in India, better photography has been the go-to resource before the internet era, right? So I still have a very special place in my heart for better photography. And even more interesting is my first ever camera was a Canon camera. So I think it's for me a very like a come back home kind of a moment.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. But before we ask Amogh any more questions, here is a short video that gives you a glimpse into Amoghavarsha's world.
My name is Amoghavarsha. I'm a wildlife photographer, filmmaker, and a storyteller. I started my journey way back in 2005 with my first job at Amazon as a software engineer. And about 2 years later, I quit to pursue my hobby of wildlife photography and filmmaking. And I've been doing this for about 15, 16 years right now. When I started traveling into the wild initially, camera became a very natural extension of myself. And slowly, of course, I figured out that you could use different tools to tell these stories. Sometimes it's photography, sometimes it's films, sometimes a mix of both. So I think storytelling has always been there for the longest of times. So I think the biggest challenges was sort of understanding everything because the field was very new then. Not many photographers were around, not many filmmakers were around, wildlife was just picking up. So even to look for guidance anywhere or look for inspiration was very hard. And even to know what to shoot, where to shoot, all of that was hard. And when you finish all of that journey and you finish all the content, how do you take it to the people? And digital was just picking up. So we started experimenting with things like LiveJournal, Orkut. This is way before Facebook and Instagram. So there were multiple challenges at multiple levels, but predominantly all of those challenges were of early starter days. When I got into the film world, we did something called the Wildlife State Anthem, which was a patriotic song about the state of Karnataka, and I collaborated with a friend of mine called Ricky Cage, and we put out this small 2-minute wildlife music video out, and we got a lot of viewership. Even to this day, that song and that anthem is played out in schools, in villages, in forest department programs. So for me, that is also a very special moment. But most importantly, I think more than accolades and rewards and things like that, when really somebody comes and tells you that this song touched them and it really made them feel happy about the state or proud about the state, for me, that's a very, very, very important key takeaway. So when you don't have a plan, it's really, really hard. But I think one thing that really kept me going is that I loved what I did. And I think in this field, what really counts is perseverance. Can you do something for a long time? Can you keep doing something repeatedly? And how long can you do it? You really have to persevere. But if you look back, they're all parts of your profile of what you're doing, and they're all part of the job. And I think if you keep at that and keep doing the same thing, at some point you will definitely reap the benefits.
It was a wonderful video, Amogh, because that last thing that you said about perseverance, I think that rings so true um, in wildlife photography, especially. Especially, I've seen that with many wildlife photographers. So my first question to you is, regarding your early beginnings, from working in Amazon as a software engineer to actively taking up photography as a career in 2008, to having your film on climate change shown in the United Nations in front of world leaders. That's quite a journey. So how did wildlife photography and subsequently filmmaking become a life choice?
So I think, Madhavan, essentially, I just love traveling, right? And coming from a technology background, you somehow feel that you want to connect to what you're seeing, and you want to bring back those memories, right? Because most often when you travel with one or two people, and somehow you feel incomplete that you're unable to bring that experience back to people. And this was just sort of the start of the digital era in photography, and I felt the camera is probably one of the greatest tools to capture what you see and bring it back in its true format, in its true essence, to the people around. And this was also the time when things like LiveJournal or Orkut or all these social networking platforms and blogging was starting. So I think for me, essentially, I used to somehow feel incomplete that I was just watching it alone. It's like a very selfish thing. And I think photography and eventually filming was a very natural progression of bringing these stories, these experiences that I see to the people, and bring it to them in a way that, it can touch their lives. And going forward, whether it's filming or it's kind of taking climate change stories to world leaders, it has always been sort of my journey to take stories from our own backyard and take it to people so that it can have a long-standing impact. And I think that's pretty much how I would say my journey into this whole thing started.
And what would you say are some of the biggest or greatest challenges that you've had? Because wildlife photography is not especially making it into a profession, converting it. It's not particularly simple or easy. It's a quintessential question regarding, how do I get into being a wildlife photographer? Perseverance, of course, is the key. But what would be some of the challenges that you faced in your career, in your life?
Oh, I think quite a few, if I have to say. And the first and foremost thing, right, when you start into a new career, is you look for guidance. You look for, where can I get some inspiration for this? Who can I ask for answers? And when I started wildlife photography, the kind of market was so new for photography itself, let alone wildlife, that I couldn't look for answers anywhere. I had to find those answers myself. There were nobody who was doing this as a profession to whom I could go and say, hey, how do you make a living out of this? What do you do? All these questions had to be answered by myself. In fact, even learning photography, I would say, was so difficult because there were no online classes or there were no photography workshops. In fact, one of the first workshops was what I started in Bangalore to take people out into the wild and teach them some amount of field photography. So I think that would be one of the bigger challenges. And following, I think when I quit my software job, my sort of salary or my earnings per month dropped to 5% of what I was making, which is it's insane, right? It's not 50%, it's 5%. So how do you live on 5% of your salary? And
Right,
the
right.
point, that we both agree, because we come from photography world, is I think it's about persevering. I think it's about going through these challenges and not losing focus of why you're doing this, right? I keep saying that, while everyone pays to go on holidays, I get paid to go on holidays, right? So those are the things that, keep you motivated to go through these kind of
Right.
journeys.
Right. Absolutely. So, and you've done it, you've made it, and the perseverance basically helps. You have to find your way out of the situation and out of the issues that you face, especially with regards to money, and you find your way around it, and that's how it works for everyone. So, but the perseverance and the patience pays off. That effort pays off, and you moved from there to National Geographic and BBC. You work with some of the biggest organizations on some of the very significant productions. So, what are some of the learnings or takeaways from these kind of assignments, these very large assignments?
So I think one of the things that essentially the Western channels, or these established sort of the behemoths of the industry, so to speak, have taught me is the pursuit of perfection and pursuit of excellence. So you cannot do a shoddy job of anything. Everything has to be on par. Everything has to be excellent. Things have to be perfect. So you would go back and shoot the same thing multiple times, so that you get the right frame, you get the right expression, you get the right uh, color, you get the right kind of tone. And also the other thing is also that these are such mature platforms that uh, you you don't have too much opportunity to goof up, whether it's in terms of ethics, in terms of filming, in terms of kind of how you behave in the field, all of these things. So in a way, I think the responsibility of sort of doing something very, very pure and also at a very high quality, at a very high bar, because even the tech specs that are given by BBC or National Geographic or Netflix or any of these guys is very,
Right.
very high, right? And now how do you match, because you have limited resources and you have only limited kind of equipment. How do you maximize all of that? So I think those are my learnings. My biggest learning, I would say, is purity of content and high quality content, like perfection and the high bar. You can't compromise on those things. Those are just not done, I would say.
Right. And of course, this is a cliched question. What or who are your greatest inspirations?
Well, I think there's just one answer in the wildlife filmmaking domain. If you ask anybody, and that has to be Sir David Attenborough, because I
Of
think
course.
more than just a voice, right? He is probably one of the largest and biggest reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing today. His films have been at least a window into the wild, into the outside sort of planet, that for me at least, because otherwise we wouldn't get to see what is there out there. And he brought it all into our sort of living rooms in a way that we could enjoy it. And I think we call him the god of wildlife. So
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. He's such an inspirational figure, especially, even thinking about the kind of work that he has done across over his life. In fact, Sir David Attenborough has been the narrate, has his voice has been the narration in your latest video, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's special for more than one way, because my wildest dream, I'm being very honest, Madhavan, my wildest dream would be to go and get an autograph from him on one of his books. And in fact, one of the film festivals, I had taken the book thinking I'll get an autograph from him, and he didn't show up. So I was really bummed, because I went to UK to this film festival thinking he's going to come, right, and he didn't turn up. So I've like spent a bunch of £1,000, and then I'm like, oh damn, he didn't come. And then eventually, when he came and narrated our film and read the script that I had written, right? I don't know. I think it's beyond my dream. I mean, I wouldn't have dreamt. Like, even if you had to ask me to dream my wildest dream, that would not be my wild dream.
Brilliant, brilliant, absolutely. I was thinking this is the thing. It's a dream come true to have someone like him read out your script and read out your narration. That's brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
So, where are some of the most famous places to shoot? I ask this question to many wildlife photographers because it's nice for the audience also to know, about some of your favorite places to shoot.
Well, I think this answer has been this question itself has been a journey for me personally, because I think as soon as we take to photography, we think that we have to go to the most exotic of locations to get great pictures. And increasingly, I've realized this over the period of many years of doing this for about 2 decades, that it's the special place for me has been my backyard, right? My Western Ghats and my deciduous jungles in Karnataka. So, one, it's it's your backyard, right? So you have a personal connection, and you can understand a lot more. And when you can understand a lot more, you can do more justice to the photography that you do, and you can tell better stories. And the second thing also is that our backyards are not as celebrated. We think that to get a great picture, we have to go to some exotic location. And I've seen that some of my greatest pictures, though I've traveled pretty much across the world, short of one continent, traveled across 4 or 5 continents, is that some of my most special images or most special experiences have been in the backyard, because it's very abstract. It's hard to say, right? It's home, and when you can, and I
Correct.
think nobody can depict your home better than you can, right? And I strongly believe that. So I think I would say that, especially during this COVID lockdown, you won't believe, I've done some photography in my own balcony. I've taken pictures right here of birds standing in the balcony. So I think, yeah, you don't have to go too far to get great pictures.
Right. I completely agree with that too, because although my patience for wildlife photography, I realize that I'm not a patient person. So wildlife photography, even though I enjoy nature photography, in fact, is one of the things that I do is fine art nature photography. But wildlife photography in particular is actually very, very difficult. It's about a lot of disappointment. It's about a lot of patience. I realized that early on, and I also realized this about the most incredible images can be found right outside your front door, or right outside your back door.
But
So I mean,
Madhavan,
it's
just to add, I think I'm also a very impatient person in the city. Huh? I can only get patient when I get out of the city. When I'm waiting for an animal is when I can get patient. Otherwise, I can't be patient in the city. If you make me sit down in the city for like 30 minutes, it's not possible. Put me out in the wild and I'm going to wait. So how about I
right.
take you out next time and try your patience in the wild?
I will take you up on that. I will certainly take you up on that.
Great.
Okay, so you are one of Canon's newest ambassadors. In fact, I think it was very, very recent that Canon approached you, and you have become a Canon ambassador. How did this happen? And very significantly, why Canon?
So, like I said, my first camera was a Canon. It was one of Canon's first digital cameras, a 350D. And like all for people who get into photography, I thought if I buy a digital SLR, I'm done, right? And then I realized this whole story about lenses and the number of lenses you'll need, right? So I think my journey started with Canon, and predominantly we use a lot of Canon lenses in filming. I mean, over the years, right? Because Canon makes some of the best glass in the world, and they're also extremely versatile lenses. I mean, I can pretty much get one of my favorite lenses even today is a 200-400 with an inbuilt converter, and they were the first people to come bring this lens which has an inbuilt converter where you don't have to add another converter. And of course, when Canon approached me, I and we were speaking about it, I knew that they had this new sort of weapons in the arsenal, and I'd heard about this, and I was very, very excited, because what happens is, because most of our lenses are Canon, we have to use adapters and things like that when we use different kind of brands for filming. And we've always been wondering, how can we get a smaller form factor camera which does everything and is also native and does everything natively. And I think, given that their new cameras were coming out, and the fact that we've been using their lenses for, I mean, the last 2 decades, I think it was kind of a no-brainer for me. And I mean, it's pretty much, I would say, a very organic, natural fit, and that's how it happened.
Wonderful. How do you prepare for a shoot? Tell us what goes into your camera bag.
Oh, wow. That's a very, very loaded question, and a very, very big question. To just give you some context, tomorrow we are leaving for a shoot in the Western Ghats for the monsoons. And the first thing in my bag is going to be leech socks, because there's going to be plenty of leeches there, right?
Okay.
So I think you start with the most fundamentals and basics, which is what you need for survival in the wild. It could be leech socks, it could be torches, it could be lights and things like that. But when it comes to camera equipment, it is very subjective. What is the subject I'm capturing? What is the environmental conditions there? What kind of equipment will I have freedom to carry? Is it going to be raining? Will I be able to lug large cameras? Do I have to walk a lot? So I think it's about making these prudent decisions. People always think if you take a big, bulky camera, you'll always get a great picture. I don't think so. I mean, form factor for me plays a large role. Can I actually take these cameras and do some meaningful filming? Because otherwise, sometimes I have seen this in field that the amount of gadgets you carry, by the time you set up that shot is gone. In the wild, you don't have the kind of liberty and the kind of freedom to wait, right? I mean, things just happen. You can't say, "Oh, I will recreate this." You don't have that luxury. So predominantly, when I prepare for a shoot, I make sure that we take equipment which can be handled in the situation that we are going in very well and does not complicate the shoot. The second most important thing, and I think this is a kind of a bit of an advice for people who are starting out photography, is make sure you carry extra batteries and extra memory cards. This is like a very fundamental rule, right? This is like saying take the lens cap before filming, but most often people forget, that cards can crash, batteries can run out, and all of these things. So I constantly reiterate that the fundamentals, make sure that the fundamentals are right. I mean, I've had shoots where I, lent my tripod to somebody, and this person, when he gave me the tripod back, he didn't put a tripod plate, and the whole shoot got cancelled because I didn't check for the tripod plate when I went. So I think it's the fundamentals that actually really matter when you're preparing for a shoot.
Just a small follow-up question on that, Amogh. So, a personal shoot as compared to, let's say, a professional assignment. Of course, you have to be very objective oriented also for a professional assignment. When you because you know exactly what you're going to be filming, you know the location where you're going to be going, you know the environment, the kind of situation which you might encounter, so you can prepare for it. On a personal level, when you walk out of the door for a personal kind of shoot, what goes through your mind, and how do you actually process that? How do you work with that? Just on a personal level.
So I think, Madhavan, for me, if I'm going on a personal shoot, I want to be free. I want to experience freedom from. In some ways, I want to experience freedom in terms of even gadgetry, like carrying a whole bunch of different cameras and lenses and this and that. I don't want to do that because that, in some ways, takes away from the creative expression of things. So what I do is I make sure I take a very minimal kit. I take one camera body and maybe one or two lenses, which I really love and which gives me the flexibility of shooting in whichever. And I make it very light. It has to feel like I'm enjoying the journey and I'm not just getting burdened by carrying 100, 200 things with me, which I'm not going to pull out and use. So I think when I do my personal trips, there's definitely a binocular in hand because I like to see a lot more than shoot half the times because, shooting is a professional hazard, right? Half the times, the
Right.
wildlife that I've actually filmed, I've not seen through my eyes. I've only seen through the viewfinder, right? So I
Right.
think it's a nice combination of carrying a nice pair of binoculars and taking a small, handy camera which I can just sling around my neck and kind of be free.
Basically, something that you can fit into a backpack. That's
Absolutely,
basically.
absolutely, absolutely.
And with that, viewers, we will take a short break. We will come back shortly with the second part. So please stay tuned.